Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, August 21st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game, Tony Gerdeman, in just 10 days. The game against Michigan in 101 days. Every day I get just a little more excited to say those numbers because they just keep getting a little bit smaller every day. Season almost here. We are live inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Just got a chance to talk to Matt Guerrieri in the Ohio State safeties, Keenan Bailey in the Ohio State tight ends. A lot of interesting stuff. Those are not necessarily two position groups that everyone is, boy, I can't wait to hear from the Ohio State safeties. But, some really interesting stuff tonight. I guess I titled the show around Caleb Downs because Caleb Downs is what everyone's kind of most interested in hearing. And I think you were there with Matt Guerrieri when he was talking about Caleb Downs as well. It just, Caleb Downs is someone who is universally recognized as one of, if not the best players on this team, one of the best, if not the best players in the nation. And the stuff that sets him apart is not necessarily like, oh, yeah, sure, he's a freak athlete. But that's not what anyone talks about when they ask, what sets him apart.
Yeah, well, I even asked Matt Guerrieri, what has surprised you about him? And he's like, everything that he can do on the field. You see all of that. But what a lot of people don't know is what kind of teammate he is with younger players. He's a sophomore.
He's a sophomore. So I guess literally just the freshman then?
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah, just and maybe some high school recruits. But he is one of those guys, an old soul in that way, but he helps everybody out. Really, really good teammate and knows everything about the defense, can play any position basically, and we haven't talked about him much because he's just understood. He's a known quantity. And so when you're in camp, you're kind of not talking about the known quantities as much because there's other things, we don't know about this. We don't know about this. And yet he still never played a game at Ohio State. He's still very new, but no, he's old news, but really, really good news as well.
Really, really good news. And all the stuff he talked about was all stuff that Matt Guerrieri talked about. He also talked about Caleb Downs, just his memory.
Oh, yeah.
And his mind for the game and how Guerrieri said he would sit down and watch every snap of the 2023 Alabama season where Downs was a starter for Nick Saban's defense. And he said, when you're watching, you get a little graphic that comes up before each play that says down and distance and, where the ball is. And normally, if it was Ohio State, it would say, here was the defensive play call. They obviously don't know all of Alabama's defensive play call, so it was just down and distance and where the ball was. And he said, every play, Downs would go, yeah, this is the defense we were in, and here's what happened on the play. Just an incredible memory as well. Sure, being a freak athlete is great. Sure, being a great teammate is great. But also to have, no one said photographic memory, but it feels like either an incredible memory or just grinding in the film room in a way that you just don't see.
Well, and beyond memory, just understanding as well, where this is all a language he speaks. We don't need to learn English every day. We speak it. Some of us speak
Some
English
of us might need to.
every day. That's just the language he speaks. And yeah, of course, it's remembering all of this, but it is his second language and maybe his first language of football. And it's impressive. And I wonder, it certainly seems rare the way Matt Guerrieri was talking about it. This is a guy that, we'll just pull up the film and give you every little bit of rundown. And it's football savant, perhaps, just such a reassuring piece of your defense, and to have him at the back end. And of course, he's well versed in this defense, completely comfortable in it, and is lived up. Hasn't played a game yet, Tom. Lived up to all of the billing before the games.
You're hearing all the stuff that you, if you're an Ohio State fan, would be hoping to hear right now. This is all the stuff that sort of feels like it's setting up. Hey, this might be a pretty good season for this guy who the expectations are already really, really high for. He is someone who his first language is certainly defense. He has been studying some second language as well. Offense as a second language, Tony. That was something Ryan Day brought up at some point in the late spring, early summer. That Caleb Downs is they're thinking about maybe putting him at running back sometimes too. Downs was asked, was that a serious thing or is that kind of, oh no, it was a serious thing. He said, he's not expecting. The last time he took snaps there was sort of late summer, so it sounds like not in fall camp. So this is not something that's probably super imminent. But he said, he could play 10 snaps or so on offense. He wants to be realistic about it. And someone asked him, there's a guy in Colorado who he's like, oh yeah, that's my buddy. That's my buddy Travis. And Travis Hunter, of course, plays on both sides of the ball for Colorado. And it sounds like he's maybe talked to him a little bit about that, gotten a little bit of a sense for what that might be like. So certainly not something I would expect to see real early, but if you get to a break glass in case of emergency point with that, he's there if you need him.
We were at 0.5 on the number of offensive touches for him before the season. Are you ready to move that to 1.5?
That's a great question.
They've got to show it at some point, right? Just to make people deal with it.
They probably put it out there at some point.
Michigan State, first half when it's 48-0.
That if you put them out there against Michigan State when it's 48-0, and we will get to the super chat in a minute. If you put them out there when you're up 48-0 against Michigan State, that tells everyone this is a decoy. Okay. You do not need to pay attention to that. Do you put them out there in the third quarter against Oregon, even just to make them burn a timeout? Is it something like that? I'm still going to treat this as a, in the same vein as the jack position, in the same vein as the J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber 2-back formation. I need to see it before I believe it. But
let me just say, diamond formation against Nebraska, and in honor of Nebraska, running that with Travion, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Downs, and Will Howard.
I will give you 3 points in the bold predictions if that happens. All right. Let's get to the super chat before Kevin's arm falls off.
Ryan Dawes, does Downs make the first big play of the season, and what is it?
So Ryan Dawes wants to know, does Caleb Downs make the first big play of the season, and what is it? Well, he's not going to be a kickoff returner. Mm-hmm. He was asked about being a punt returner. He said he's fielded plenty of punts, and if they need him, he will be the punt returner. Didn't feel like that was super imminent, so I will say first big play of the season. Well, you got to think. They're probably deferring if they win the toss. If Akron wins the toss, they are probably deferring and trying to, right? They're probably deferring. So you're probably
wouldn't they want the offense out there just because, or I don't know.
You don't want to have the crowd going too crazy right at the start of the season. I think no matter who, you're probably deferring. Mm-hmm. So now we're at 50-50. Someone is going to make a big play for Ohio State in the first 37 seconds of that game. So really the question is which side of the ball, which side of the team is on the field. I'm going to say, Tony, I'm going to go back to the 2002 season when the opening kickoff against Texas Tech, Bobby Carpenter, true freshman, came flying down the field, made a big tackle at the, 8-10 yard line, something like that. Really a tone setter for that game. And as it turned out that season, I'm going to say, Tony, Garrett Stover makes the first big play of the season in a very similar situation, or Jaden Fielding does it by kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone.
I thought you were going to go with Bobby Carpenter. I will say Jordan Hancock. I think a 3rd and 9 interception type of or something like that. So I'll go Jordan Hancock. Thank you for the super chat.
All right. So we've touched on Caleb Downs on defense, Caleb Downs on offense, Caleb Downs on special teams. So
good night, everybody.
And Caleb Downs as a teammate. So I think we're out of Caleb Downs topics to talk about. So now let's talk about the other guy who's going to be probably pretty good for Ohio State at the safety position, and that is Lathan Ransom. Caleb Downs was asked about. He has certainly been the recipient of lots of preseason accolades and All-Americans and all that kind of stuff. And Lathan Ransom is just sort of also there. And what does he think about that? And he's like, it's nuts. It is crazy because Lathan Ransom is, he's expecting big things out of Lathan Ransom this year. The two of them together at the back of this defense, it feels like Downs is going to get all the attention, but the two of them together at the back of this defense could just change the entire picture for opposing offenses.
Yeah, I was watching a Michigan podcast. I won't mention the outlet, but they were laughing about Lathan Ransom being back and the impact that he would have on this Ohio State defense. So I'll bookmark. I'll send you a link.
Did they know he missed the second half of last season?
It's whatever, Tom. It's whatever. But And I wanted to ask Matt Guerrero this. I was just running around, didn't get a chance to, but like,
Matt, you listen to a lot of Michigan podcasts?
well, you want to hear what I heard on the internet? Matt, listen to this. But just what that does for him as a coach to have Lathan Ransom back for the entire defense. And he's been around, Ryan Day, we've talked about this many times. In 2020, he was raving about Lathan Ransom as a true freshman. Like, this kid is advanced. And now he's his fully realized self, hoping to be healthy for the entire season, can do anything you want. He can play strong safety. He can play free safety. He spent a year or two playing nickel in the defense as well, and is a fantastic blitzer, but just a calming force in a defense that is going to be pretty havoc laden. So to have him as one of those pieces, I think is fantastic. And then you put those two together, and then they interlock basically, and they make everybody stronger. So I think those two guys together, fantastic. But no, Lathan Ransom is not being talked about enough. But again, he's even a little different than a proven commodity. He's more like an ignored commodity. Like, he's just off. He's doing his own thing. Like, saw him waiting for an interview. He's just chilling, just whatever. And I don't think he cares.
No, I don't think he is at all hung up on, I'm not getting enough attention. I'm not, frankly. He's probably happy to be out there after missing. Yeah. He got hurt in the Wisconsin game last year, which was Halloween weekend. I remember Wisconsin students being dressed up as Big Bird and stuff in the stands. So it must have been Halloween weekend. But he missed the second half of the season, and it wasn't quite Christian Bryant going down with that broken leg after was it the Northwestern? Was that also a Wisconsin game? It was also a Wisconsin game. It wasn't quite that level of a gap that from the 2013 season. But you noticed him out there, and the not long, but 20 whatever yard Blake Corum touchdown was, Sonny Styles was out there, and Corum made a cut, and Styles was maybe a little off on his angle, and you kind of looked at that and went, Lathan Ransom might have gotten him down to the ground there. And so, having him out there again this year probably going to make a pretty significant difference on the defense. There was lots of questions for Matt Guerrero about the younger guys. I'm going to say Keenan Nelson's name first, specifically so that I do not say Keenan Reynolds, because the Navy fan in my head wants to say Keenan Reynolds every time I think about him. Keenan Nelson, still out there sort of working his way through. He seems like he's probably more of a 2025 impact player rather than 2024. Came in late, able to over the summer, and South Carolina transfer. They're fine at safety right now. More of a long-term proposition. Jalen McClain sounds like he has really impressed. Again, not necessarily a this year guy. And Jaden Bonsu said the first thing that Matt Guerrero said, I love when I'm like, I bet I know what he's going to say. And he gets asked about Jaden Bonsu. First thing is a big hitter. Like, that's what everyone says about Jaden Bonsu. Looks like it, plays like it. Yeah. And I don't know that he got asked about, maybe I was not there when he got asked about Malik Hartford. Was there any questions about Malik Hartford?
Gosh, maybe I.
Oh, did you? Well, then, Tony, what did Matt Guerrero have to say about Malik Hartford?
I forget what he said. It was a good question. It was a really good question. Now, I did ask him, would Malik be the third guy and the next guy in regardless at either spot? And he's like, yeah, probably, because they teach them both spots. They don't want just one guy to be able to play one spot. So I would assume, and that's something we had talked about, he's the most experienced guy. He has played both spots. They like guys to be able to play both spots because, as you've talked with Ross and others on the X's and O's portion of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, when you've got your two safeties and your nickel, and the slot shifts over and comes over here, and now everybody rotates, and your strong safety becomes your free safety becomes your nickel becomes your strong safety. So you've got to be able to play all of those. And so, he's doing well there. He said he's getting more comfortable. Talked to Malik Hartford a little bit, but he's still, sophomore, searching for that consistency. But the experience that he got last year is way more than most freshman safeties get. So that's only going to bode well for this year.
And I don't know, have we talked about the different position names? It feels like everyone just sort of needs a refresher this time of year. We talk about the Mike linebacker and the Sam linebacker, all that kind of stuff. At the safety position, the deep safety spot, which is going to be Caleb Downs, that is the adjuster in Ohio State's defense. You typically think of that. The traditional name is like a free safety. The bandit is the boundary safety. Traditionally think of that as the strong safety position. That'll be Lathan Ransom this year. The adjuster is traditionally you think of that as the Malik
hooker
position. I couldn't get past Malik Hartford. And the strong safety bandit position, you typically think of that as like the Mike Doss position. So that's just when we're talking about the safeties there. And then the nickel, the third back, it's really, sometimes they classify him as a safety. Jordan Hancock came out, was interviewed with the corner. So that tells me they consider him a corner, but those are sort of the 2.5 safety positions there. Anything else on the safeties before we move on to the unit for whom it may very well be the year?
No, let's hurry up. Please get to.
Let's get to the year of the tight end. I did not hear anything of Keenan. Now I'm going to say Keenan Reynolds again. Keenan Bailey.
Nelson Bailey?
No.
Former Blue Jays? I don't know.
No. Keenan
Mariners?
Bailey, Ohio State tight ends coach. Were you over there for any of his interviews?
No, because then somebody else came out. But I did get to spend time with G. Scott and Jelani Thurman, and I'm sure people want to hear about Jelani Thurman because he's been getting a lot of buzz from Ryan Day critically to start camp, and then praiseworthy this most recent time that we talked with Ryan Day. And somebody asked him, "Hey, what do you think about Ryan Day talking about you like that?" And he's like, "I don't know. What'd he say?" And so Stephen Means,
was it good?
Yeah. So Stephen Means from Cleveland.com goes ahead and pulls it up and gives it word for word. He's like, "That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice when you hear stuff like that." But this was, he seems very comfortable, very confident, but not cocky. Confident, and as I told you before the show, like confident and realistic, because he did say, "I expect to play this year, but if I don't, it's my fault. And I will control how much I play by how well I play." And he praised G. Scott for the leadership that he's provided and the fantastic camp that he's had, that G. Scott has had. But he's like, it's not about seniority. It's about who is most ready to play, who is best for the team. They will play. And that may not be me, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it is, or to do everything I can to get there. And that's the same thing that G. Scott said. This is his last year. His goal is to be the best version of himself, to be the best player for Ohio State. And whatever that looks like, as long as he's given his all and he's done everything he can, he'll be satisfied. But with Jelani, I've got a bunch of quotes from him, but, he's like I know I'm a mismatch sometimes, maybe a lot of times, that sort of thing, where he's 6'6", 255 pounds. And as Ryan Day said, he has everything that you could want physically. It's just about consistency, and that's exactly what Jelani Thurman said. I just need to be more consistent. If that consistency is there, he'll be on the field.
It feels like we should start a consistency club with guys who you've heard so many times over the years. You see flashes, you see it, but you got to see it more consistently. And that is something that generally, if you're hearing that, you're not seeing those guys on the field until they feel that consistency and see that consistency out there. Because when you're an Ohio State caliber team and you have the type of talent advantage that Ohio State typically has, you just want consistency. They want, they talk about this with the punters. They want the punters to be able to hit the ball between 40 and 44 yards and have 4 seconds of hang time. Because you don't need the guy who sometimes hits at 80, but sometimes hits at 20. You want the guy who just, what you're going to get, because what you're going to get, if you get what you're expecting, is going to be good enough to beat minimally 10 teams on the schedule this year, and maybe more.
I mean, Tom, that's why Chipotle has dropped. You always used to know what you were going to get. Now you don't always know what you're going to get, and fewer people go.
Guess we'll go a little longer before we talk about who our today's podcast is sponsored by.
One other thing with Jelani, I asked him, you play this developmental position. We talk about it all the time. What's it like trying to develop against the Ohio State defense? And it's not easy. It's the whole time. I don't know if you ever heard this, iron sharpening iron. But I did say, what's it like when you have a bad day here? And he said, no such thing as a bad day. They're just lessons. That's pretty much your answer.
That is a pretty mature answer. And that feels like something he's, not because it's him, but it feels like something that you got told after you had a bad day. That feels like the kind of coaching point that the fact that it has stuck with him and resonated with him. That's typically something that we will see here, is we can kind of tell what the coaches are saying to the players, because we'll hear it kind of over and over and over. Iron sharpening iron, to give you one example that we haven't used on the show yet today. But yeah, he is someone who, it feels like it's all in there, and it's just a matter of, does it get consistent, which is the things that I'm sure everyone rolls their eyes about is, you got to block well, you got to be consistent. That's what you got to do to be a tight end at Ohio State. That's what you got to be. You got to be able to handle the blitz pickups if you want to be the running back. It's great if you do all the other stuff. You got to be able to do that stuff. It's the real boring, nitty gritty stuff that actually makes a difference.
Yeah. Somebody asked him, how big are your hands? So he showed his hands to the camera. He's like, I got big mitts, big for catching, good for blocking. But he was, he mentioned G. Scott first. We talked with G. Scott first, and he was talking about how he was on Jelani all the time last year. Like, he didn't want to be like constantly on him, but he was on him. He's on him much less this year. And they roomed in fall camp both times. Jelani wasn't asked about was G on you a lot last year. He's like, yeah, I don't want to say it was annoying, so I won't. But yes, he was on me a lot.
That's a great way to handle that question. I don't want to say this, so I won't.
Next question.
Just to be clear, the reason I'm not saying this is because I don't want to say that. Will Kazmarek, the transfer tight end from Ohio University, he talked about his transition to Ohio State. I did not get a chance to ask him about his order of Bagel Street Deli, which it will be forever to my irritation, but I had to go run over and get some clips with Caleb Downs. Kazmarek talked about the adjustment to Ohio State and just the adjustment to the speed of the game, but also he said a lot of times routes to him were, I'm running a 7-yard curl. Well, I run 7 yards and then I turn around. And he said, I got here, it was like, oh no, there's a lot more to it than that. Wow. And so just developing, and he said he's been talking to current teammates, former Ohio State walk-on, turned Ohio University star wide receiver, turned LA Rams. I have to think about where they play now. All these teams moving around.
Oakland.
No, Cody Simon called them the Oakland Raiders. I'm like, my man, they did not know where teams play. That's my bit. You stay off the west side. The Kazmarek talked about working with Sam Wiglusz, talking to him about what he had learned from his time with the Rams in terms of running routes, but just all the detail stuff. He said the Y tight end spot is probably where he's most comfortable right now, but there's just a lot of learning, a lot of development that's going on with him. But he certainly seems like he's someone who, he and G. Scott are 1 and 1A probably in some order in that tight end room, with Jelani Thurman probably the next guy on the list.
Yeah, I would agree. And then Pat Gert is kind of his own thing as the H of the group, I would think. But they can all do all of those things. It's a deeper group than it was in the spring, but I still think they all believe they have room to grow for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely room for growth, and it is not going to be easy to replace Cade Stover. Cade Stover, this was not this interview session, but it was sometime last week, I think, when one of the coaches was talking about Cade Stover, and Cade Stover had maybe played more snaps than you probably should have in the 2022 season, and replacing him is not going to be easy. That's going to be a little bit of it takes a village kind of situation. One other thing I did want to mention in terms of the Caleb Downs interview, he talked about going up against the offense and the running back, how talented the running back room is. And he said Quinshon, Trey, those are kind of the two phrases of the bingo card, even James Peoples. And so, not a big surprise James Peoples is the third guy. This is just one of these things where if you're starting to work your way into that conversation as a true freshman, okay, that's just file that one away. Yep. Feels like that might be, we are certainly expecting him to be the third running back off the bench in any kind of second half of an Akron game kind of situation or any of that kind of stuff. But it sounds like he's really kind of earning his way into that kind of a role.
Yeah, and as we always say, you listen for names that come up unprompted, and when it's freshmen like that, it's never meaningless to me.
No, definitely not. Cody Simon came out, little bonus coverage in the words of the great Jerry Emig. Of course, it is not linebacker day, but Cody Simon not only named a captain, also the Block O recipient. What was interesting to me was obviously very honored, a little emotional maybe about being honored like that. But the Block O obviously means a lot to him. But he said just growing up, the idea of being a captain of a college football team was something he really aspired to. His older brother played at Pitt. He was only there for a couple of years after transferring, but he was a captain at Pitt. He earned his captain spot relatively quickly after arriving at Pitt. So the idea of being a captain at Ohio State, really meaningful to him. You could tell that really meant a lot. And you asked him about his journey because he talked about the fact that, it'd be great to be a 3-year guy and first overall pick in the NFL draft. Like, sure, that's great, but that's not everyone's journey. And he's had a little bit of a long and winding road to get here, but he's really in a spot where he's set up to have a really special last season.
He was Ohio State's starting middle linebacker as a sophomore, and now he's in his 5th year looking to become a starter for the second time. And he started the last 5 games or whatever last year. But this is a guy that thought he was to the moon. Like, I was on a rocket ship probably in his own mind, and to be able to go through that and stay grounded, and not just stay grounded, but get yourself up off the ground and be a leader in his own way since then. Because it's not like he ever just blinked out. Like, he's always been around, and he's always played, and he's always come out and talked to us. And he's lived up to just the mantle of being an Ohio State linebacker, and it's something he takes great pride in. And he said he kind of dreamed and wished to be a captain, but you never think about the block O. And then it gets put on you, and he completely understands it. He talked about what's it mean to you? What's the message? And he pointed over to the fight, the sign down there that says fight. And it's not about fighting your teammates. It's just fighting through adversity, fighting to make sure that you are the best version of yourself. And he's kind of, I think he's gotten there. He's getting there.
And we do have a couple questions. We're going to get to those in a minute. I just had a couple more things. As I'm scrolling through the videos I tweeted out to remind myself of what I heard people say. Caleb Downs was asked about the talent level at Ohio State right now compared to the teams that he saw and or participated in last season at the top of the SEC. Of course, he was at Alabama. They played Georgia last year. They played all the top of the SEC kind of teams. There was kind of a long pause at the start of his interview because he was really, I think, thinking about how to answer the question, and said, basically, the talent is there, but the talent is just one piece of it. You can be extremely talented, and if you don't come out prepared, and Akron comes out and is prepared and really detail focused, and you're not, then that could be a game longer than you think it might otherwise be. So talent only gets you so far. The other thing that Cody Simon was asked about, and this is something that we'll get asked about periodically on our board, the Huddle Board, presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com. There are people who are very interested in hearing more about the helmet radios, and we have gotten a lot, we ask about them periodically, and you kind of get the same answer over and over again. He gave a different answer. He's talking about having the helmet on, having Jim Knowles in his ear all the time, and what that's like. That's something the coaches, I think, are still trying to find that balance in terms of how much is too much talking, how much is not enough talking. One thing that Cody Simon brought up was offenses, they try and manipulate things to avoid giving the defense an advantage. So perhaps breaking the huddle after 15 seconds, because when the play clock hits 15 seconds, the helmet radio shuts off. The coaches can talk to you, they can say whatever they want, they can read you the phone book, and then once the play clock reaches 15 seconds, the helmet radio shuts off. So it sounded like he was anticipating maybe offenses waiting till 15 seconds to break the huddle, and then your eyes in the sky, your defensive coordinator upstairs can't tell you anything about the formation they're in or any of that kind of stuff, which is interesting to me. He was asked also, is that something your offense is doing? He's like, it's harder to do that in camp because you're not really doing it with the 15 seconds and all that kind of stuff. But I thought that was interesting.
Well, and Knowles even said last time we talked to him, he's not doing a lot of talking into the helmet. For part of the reason is he needs the players to be able to figure it out, because exactly what you're talking about, if you can't tell them what, you've got to send in the play, and then they're going to have to adjust on their own based on what they're going to see, just like they did. Or you've got they'll go back to their signals and do it that way. And so it was interesting where he's like, trying to hear it over the noise. I wonder if we're now going to see defenses telling the home crowd, "Hey, shh."
That's interesting.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Gotta.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you want the crowd to be as loud as you want, because
all of the
it messes
like
with the offensive signals.
But now it's like, no.
Yeah, boy, that's there's a lot of this stuff that's going to be so interesting to see how it plays out on the field. Do you have anything else in your notes before? Okay, let's get to a few questions from our wonderful audience. And before we get to those questions, the best way to get us to answer your questions is to hit the thumbs up button on the video. Helps other folks find these shows and encourages us, of course, to do even more of them, which I'm assuming people would view as a positive thing. So, all right, Kevin, what do we got?
Yeah, loaded up with Jordan Kapler. First, not asking you to make a prediction. If you could decide Ohio State's opening play or even the entire drive, what would it be? I want good answers only, so don't let Tony answer.
All right, so, wow, the season, the weather has turned, and so has Jordan's opinion of hosts on this show. Fascinating. Both very welcome changes, if you ask me. So the question, in case you had trouble hearing, what would be the ideal first play call for Ohio State? If you had a choice, what would your choice be in terms of a play call, in terms of maybe even a first drive? If it's me, and I know this is not an exciting answer, what did Ohio State not do consistently last year? Well, a lot of things, but what did Ohio State not do consistently on offense last year?
Run between the tackles?
Run between the tackles.
Anywhere?
It feels like this is not going to be, the fun answer is a triple reverse flea flicker, and it doesn't matter if you're backed up to your 1 yard line, you call it, and don't be a coward. To me, I think you want to go out there and you just want to #establish it, as the kids say. Just pound the ball. You've got a couple running backs. You set stuff up for later. Don't worry, there will be plenty of time to pass the ball later. It just feels like you want to come out and make a statement. That would be much more of a statement than the Jeremiah Smith runs past some hapless former Division II Kutztown State transfer or whoever.
You just took my answer.
Whoever is playing corner.
But I was going to say
Akron.
play action.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's something. So there you go. So, Tony, what's your answer?
QB power. No, I do expect them. You get 6 yards on first down, and then you open up everything on the playbook. And you don't have to do, like you said, you don't have to do it all in the first drive. There's going to be 2 entire quarters with which the first team offense can operate.
1.5, but yes. But yeah, I think you're going to see them try to make a point to show the run in a way they had not necessarily been able to show it last year. And that's partly you got some good running backs. It's partly you've got the return of the QB run.
Mm-hmm.
It's partly the addition of Chip Kelly to the staff. I think all of that stuff to me says they are going to try to pound the rock a little bit at the beginning of the game, just sort of to prove a point. Next up.
From N8, so Nate, are they going to continue to wear the Guardian cap helmets during practice once the season starts?
So Nate wants to know, are they going to continue to wear the Guardian cap helmets, the sort of padded helmet covers that they've been wearing during practice? Yes, those are mandatory, team mandated for this season. Last year, that was an optional thing, and you saw certain guys, especially guys who had maybe gotten a concussion earlier in the year, you saw some of those guys wearing it. Ryan Day said a couple weeks ago that they got information from the NFL in terms of studies, in terms of how that had worked and impacts at the NFL level, and it sounds like the results were good. So therefore, they have mandated that for all players for the practices. It did not sound like it is not mandatory during games.
Right.
I'm not expecting to see anyone wearing them during games, but I did see there was one guy on maybe the Indianapolis Colts, who was Jonathan Taylor. Okay. So Jonathan Taylor, former Wisconsin running back and current Indianapolis Colts running back, who did wear it during a preseason game. I don't know if he's planning to wear it during the regular season or not, but I guess theoretically you could wear it during a game, but it sounded, based on what Ryan Day said last week, like that was not something they were expecting people to be dealing with.
How are you going to get the QR code on there?
It's a good question. Would you like to explain the joke, or would you like to just move on?
No, I just want to move on. It's your show.
Alex,
I don't want any exposition.
Alex Trick, how many snaps will Downs play at running back this season?
How many snaps will Downs play at running back this season? Tony, I will take. We sort of talked about this at the beginning of the show, and I'm trying to remember what I said at the beginning of the show. I still feel like I think I kind of gotta see it before I believe it. So I'm going to say 0 is the most likely answer.
I think we're going to see it. The seriousness with which it has been talked about, and not some Mike Doss in 2002 when Jim Tressel would joke about it, or he would joke about it, because Chris Gamble doing it and I want to do it too, or Maurice Claret saying he wanted to do it. Of course, he didn't end up playing in 2003 to do it, but it was always kind of in jest. This doesn't feel like jest. It's very much emergency, but is there a good reason to do it if you don't need to do it?
Well, Downs was asked about which side of the ball are you more likely to get hurt on. And he thought about it for a while and then said probably offense, because you're absorbing the blows on that side of the ball.
Don't
in a
get
way.
tackled.
Smart. Well, he did say his goal on every play was to score. So if you do that correctly, if you can execute that game plan, that would impact your likelihood of getting hurt. It just feels to me like he's so valuable to them on defense, and they have other guys on offense, and they can put, Brandon Inniss is someone who we've talked about a bunch recently in terms of really making a leap in terms of the wide receiver depth chart. He's also someone we've sort of heard mentioned as a possibility if he got to a break glass in case of emergency on offense at the running back spot. It feels to me like you're going to see Brandon Inniss take a snap at running back before you see Caleb Downs. And you're certainly going to see Brandon Inniss have 30 carries before you see Caleb Downs. Almost certainly, maybe you see Downs out there once or twice just to sort of, like I said, stir stuff up and give people something to worry about. But that doesn't feel to me like something that's going to be a significant part of the offense this year.
Was that the question about snaps or carries? Would you say one snap on offense just as a decoy, just to get people thinking and talking?
Sure, I'll say one snap.
Okay.
I will say one snap on
over,
offense just to give myself a chance to play both sides of the fence.
Right. Next question, Rusty Jesse. I joined late. If Cody Simon gets hurt during a competitive game, who are the two linebackers?
So, Tony, if Cody Simon gets hurt during a game, who are the two linebackers?
I think right now it's still going to be Gabe Powers stepping in for Cody Simon. Arvell Reese is coming on, but he's a sophomore. Gabe Powers, this is his third year, so it would be him as the Mike, and then either, I assume Sonny Styles is going to be the starter at will. And if the question is about could CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles be on the field together as the two linebackers, I did ask Jim Knowles last week, where are those two in terms of being able to play Mike? Because he does want that position, those two positions, to cross-train and be able to play both. And he said they've only done it a little, and it's probably not something they're looking to do because those two guys, CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles, also play the Sam. And they're not they're still learning, still mastering the will. So you don't want to give them too much. You don't want to give them, we need you to play all three positions, do all three positions, when they're still trying to be the best will they can be. And neither one of them has started a game at will. So there's still some proving to do there.
Correct. And you got to remember, this is Sonny Styles' first year at linebacker, period, at the college level. So, yeah, that's going to be quite an adjustment. So, yes, I would agree. It's probably Gabe Powers.
No, it may be somebody else in 2 weeks.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Two more. Fort Wayne. Is it crazy to think that 8 or 9 defensive starters will be on one of the all Big Ten teams at the end of the year?
So is it crazy to think that 8 or 9 of the defensive starters could be on one of the all Big Ten teams at the end of the year? I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, first team, second team, third team, and then do they do honorable mention too? They do, right?
They do.
So
which starters aren't going to at least merit honorable mention?
I think you're very likely going to get 3 to 4 defensive linemen. You're going to get both linebackers, maybe 3 linebackers, at least 2. Which of the corners, which of the 5 defensive backs is not going to be on one of the? Well, I think, honestly, 8 is low and 9 might be low.
If we're just talking like first 3 teams or whatever, yeah, I would agree. I think it's now Jordan Hancock didn't even make honorable mention last year, but again, voters and so you got a team that's voted on by media, a team that's voted on by coaches, and I think he gets overlooked. I know he gets overlooked. Davis Igbinosin is getting overlooked. I think it was just Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs were like on the Biletnikoff or the Thorpe Award watch list.
And I get the sense that Ohio State's going to be playing enough high-profile games that everyone's going to be watching. Everyone's going to be watching the Oregon game. Everyone's going to be watching the Penn State game. Everyone's going to be watching the Michigan game. You're going to have opportunities to shine. You're probably going to have some real shiny stats. You're probably going to have a team that is ranked very, very highly and a defense that is going to be almost certainly the best in the Big Ten. If you have all of those things, you're checking an awful lot of the boxes in terms of what people are looking at when they're voting on those all-conference teams.
Last one I have, Jordan Kapler. How do you think the second-team offense would fare against the second-team defense?
So how do you think the second-team offense would fare against the second-team defense? If they let us watch these scrimmages, we'd have a much more detailed answer on this. I think a lot of this, and boy, this is challenging this fall because they just haven't had 5 healthy offensive linemen for the 1s and the 2s. So I feel like we haven't really gotten a true sample of what this looks like. The line play, a lot of this to me comes down to the line play. And I think I like the defensive line better than the offensive line, which to me probably suggests not a dominant performance by the defensive 2s, but probably winning more than 50% of the snaps.
That's where I go as well, the defensive line. But I will say the second-team offensive line is going to come out of this camp much better than they went in. And the coaches are going to feel better about them because of the way they've been forced to step up with, like Austin Searveld playing left tackle is new and doing it relatively well for being a guard and having to do it with the 1s and the 2s and that kind of experience. And whoever Carson Hinsman or Tager Shabola is going to be on with the 2s, and that's going to be a starter worthy player. So, but I would agree with the defensive line. But the secondary, the corners are good.
The safeties are young.
But is Devin Brown going to have time to throw the ball?
That's so much of the game is won and lost in the trenches, and it feels like that's kind of where you have to go in sort of a theoretical thing. Mm-hmm. Backup corners, I like Jermaine Matthews going up against, Brandon Inniss is playing the slot, so Brandon Inniss against.
Well, Jermaine Matthews might be in there.
Lorenzo, he could. Yeah, Jermaine Matthews could be inside. I like Jermaine Matthews against probably just about anyone he might be matched up against. Safeties are young, but to me, I just go back to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I'm imagining Kenyatta Jackson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's not a favorable matchup for the second-team offensive line.
Well, Tony, I'm looking around the building, and we have defeated the entire rest of the beat. Last people. Streaming to you live from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on this Tuesday night, this lovely Tuesday night in Central Ohio. And great news, Tony, we will be back again tomorrow talking to that defensive line, Kenyatta Jackson, and some of the, and the rest. Kenyatta Jackson and the rest, as they describe the Ohio State 2024 defensive line. Talking to Larry Johnson as well. Always like talking to Larry about all the good stuff that Larry likes to talk about. And so that's going to be obviously quite a lot to learn from those guys. Got Jack Sawyer, captain on this year's team. A lot of industries have to talk about. And then Thursday we're going to talk offensive line and anyone else, or is that it? I think that might be it. It might just be offensive line.
Just D-line.
Defensive line tomorrow and
linebackers? No, we've talked to
linebackers. Yeah, I think we've talked to everyone except for.
It's Larry tomorrow, Larry and his group, and then Thursday is Day and Fry.
Day. Ryan Day as well on Thursday. That's
Ryan Day, the head coach.
Yes, Ryan Day. Thank you. Thursday Day. That's what they call it, Thursday, because.
Just end the show.
Okay, well, fine. All right. So thank you guys all for joining us. If you have not hit the thumbs up button already, despite the last 30 seconds or so of the show, we ask you to do that. If you have not yet subscribed to BuckeyeHuddle.com, we'd ask you to think about that as well. As where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. Got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there to make you a smarter football fan. Plus, the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. Very fun, active community, talking Buckeye football, talking about whatever else you want to talk about. It is all there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there as well. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.